what builds that? What builds egos? I mean, maybe lots of failures. I don't know. Like I feel like us, like people in the personal development, you know, culture, tend
Right.
to have less of that egoic, you know, identity, or
You
that
have to.
ego, and
You, you know, like there's no way that you can go out there in a social setting, put yourself out there, face the inevitable hundreds, possibly thousands of rejections of various severity, and just, have your ego be like intact. You're either completely psycho, right? Like a complete sociopath that feels nothing, right? Or you just have to realize that it's not that important. And you can be wrong and still be okay. And you still have a lot of good to offer the world, even if, one person on the street doesn't notice it or whatever.
totally. Thinking about the ego and personal development, to create a little tangent for a second. I actually made a TikTok video the other day, where I was talking about psychedelics and how they become, people report them to be really profound experiences. And this TikTok video is actually kind of blowing up. I made it like 2 days ago. It's got like almost 500 likes. And I guess I picked the right sound, and like the right topic, and I used some peer-reviewed research articles. But basically, what I was trying to communicate in the video is that the reason why people find really profound experiences when they take enough of a psychedelic drug is because of that ego dissolution, or that ego death, the dissolving of this identity that you have with yourself. And because of that, you can then start to look at yourself without bias. You can start looking at yourself as though you're somebody else, right? When I think about myself, I have this bias, right? Like I have this bias of like, no, like, this is me, I'm gonna like think about all the stupid things I fucked up with on my life, and the mistakes that I'm making, and I'm gonna justify them because I don't want to hurt myself, and my ego, my feelings. I don't want to hurt my own feelings. But when you do that, you're not looking from a mirror, right? Like I'm only looking from my eyes. I'm like looking down at my body and going, this is who I am. But to look in the mirror and see what I look like and see my own flaws, that's the only way to really take away the biases, to have a different perspective. And you get that from other people for sure. But the thing I was talking about with psychedelics is like people get that ego death or ego dissolution, and the research shows that because of that, people become more self-aware and have a lot more awareness of their own habits and behaviors, which is pretty dang interesting.
Yeah, yeah. It allows them to at least put cracks in the shell that they're normally living in, this almost like a prison, the ego prison, right? And they can't see anything beyond it. And then psychedelics, even if temporarily, they put some cracks into that, and you can see a much bigger world, and you can, as you were saying, see yourself in the various different perspectives. And then for a lot of people, there's the acute experience while they're tripping, and then there's the sort of the aftermath of it, or the integration process, which can take weeks or months or potentially years, where some of those insights, which aren't necessarily even conscious, right? A lot of this stuff is subconscious. Like their subconscious cracks have been widened, and and then they sort of and then it spills over the weeks, months, years, whatever, into their day-to-day life. And it can be a profoundly transforming experience. And for most people, I highly recommend it. There are some people though who will react very badly and become like
Like
psychotic.
people who have psychosis, yeah, like here's the fair warning for anybody who would be
For sure.
listening to this.
Right.
If you have a predisposition to psychosis, it'll crack you.
Yeah. So you need a good setting, like a good trip sitter, all those things to really make sure. And in fact, now there's this organization called MAPS, the Multidisciplinary Association of Psychedelic Studies, something like that. And they're doing a lot of awesome work with MDMA. So,
Nice.
I mean, psychedelics is a huge growth field right now. In 10 years, it'll be almost mainstream medicine. Enormous potential. I love it.
Yeah, and it's so like, okay. First of all, I recommend anybody who's interested in psychedelics, look for a shaman. Like, nobody, that doesn't mean having somebody with a headdress or and some weird like little bongo drums like taking you through it, but like somebody who's like predisposed to wanting to help people in that type of experience, I feel like. Because if you're just taking like MDMA off of some rando or taking, LSD or whatever, whatever these drugs are from somebody, just from a dealer, and you're going to go by yourself and take it, like, I feel like that's not a wise experience or, a wise choice
Yeah.
to take.
I mean, you're running unnecessary risks.
Right.
Though,
And
personally, I think many people can do that safely. But it's, as far as I know, there's no easy way for the average person to know what category they're going to fall into. And there can even someone who's had 10 awesome trips, their 11th trip could be horrifying. So it's best always take precautions.
and I think as we were kind of talking about, like, you, from your own perspective, you can't really tell what's the best for you all the time.
Right.
And it's helpful to have somebody else like talk to you, get to know you, question you, and see where you're coming from and what point in your life you are, to know if you're ready for that type of experience. Because it's funny, is like, I've talked to people who would like do cocaine and MDMA and whatever all the time, on the weekends, and just go party. And I'd be like, oh yeah, like, what do you think about mushrooms? And they're like, whoa, man, that's scary.
It's a different kind of story.
It's a different kind of scary, because all those other drugs are, you're escaping, and with psychedelics, it's not escape. It's what I would tell somebody is, if you're afraid of who you are, if you're afraid of being with yourself, you're not ready to do psychedelics.
Yeah. I would have to caveat that by saying is you often don't know. For instance, when I first did psychedelics, it was kind of the opposite. I hated myself.
Back in the 70s when you were doing LSD?
Yeah, well, this was the 60s, but
60s. Yeah, right.
I really despised myself. And psychedelics was my way to escape, actually. Right?
Interesting.
Because it did sort of dissolve my ego, which was, as it turns out, the thing producing most of my anguish was my own ego. It was like, you've heard of autoimmune disorders. So depression, anxiety, those things are often, I kind of think of them as like an autoimmune disease of the mind. So it was like my own mind attacking itself nonstop without remorse. And by taking psychedelics, I could get a reprieve for 3, 4, 5 hours, however long. And so those, at the time, those were the best experiences of my life, like better than sex, like just unbelievably amazing.
I don't believe you.
What's that?
I don't believe that statement.
Oh no, it really was though.
Okay, yeah. I mean,
had sex at the time, so
yeah, I was a complete virgin, but no. Well, then try it on sex, or try sex on it, then see what happens.
Yeah, that I have not done.
Yeah, it kind of might take away the boner.